Right. Let's see, 7 o'clock. So get underway. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, November 3rd at 7 o'clock. We'd like to start our meeting off in a good way, and so I've asked Councillor Pope to read our acknowledgement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Van is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Good. Hearing none, it's been moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Murray. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Council, we have 3 sets of meeting minutes from the September 15th special council meeting, the September 29th regular council meeting, and the October 14th special council meeting. Any errors or omissions from those meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, it's been moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. All right, good evening. That brings us to our public input period. At the front of every regular meeting of council, our council preserves a period of up to half an hour for input from the community on whatever subjects they'd like to discuss generally. And we do have a couple of people who have signed up to speak in advance. Once they've finished speaking, I'll check in with the room, check in with the virtual room, and see if anyone else would like to add their comments at that time. But we do allow a period of up to a half an hour. And so the first speaker I have on an agenda item is Hazen Colbert, joining us virtually. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well, Your Worship. Mayor Little.
Welcome. I hear you clearly. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you very much. I'm going to look over here to my notes, and I'm going to refer to, I believe it's item 8.6. I may have made a mistake here. Item 8.6, which is Councillor Maw's resolution. Am I correct that Councillor Maw has a resolution, 8.6?
8.3, but yes.
Thank you for that. I didn't actually write it down. What I think is very important with respect to resolution 8.3 is the scope of the resolution. And I say this because since I have lived here in the District of North Vancouver since August the 26th of 2009, normally the scope of these types of resolutions is focused solely on people living in single-family homes in the Seymour. In this case, it would be seniors living in single-family homes in the Seymour, and also, you know, possibly also in Pemberton Heights and Upper Capilano. What I would ask is an amendment so that the scope is very clearly identified to include seniors living across the District of North Vancouver, including seniors living in, single-family homes, rental accommodation, and including seniors who belong to the LGBTQ community. I ask this in the name of what I call diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mayor Little and Council, I recognize that as soon as I made this request to include the scope of all seniors in the District of North Vancouver, and that includes transgendered people, gay men, lesbian women, bisexual people, people living in rental accommodations. I truly recognize that there will be some people who will be listening tonight, and they will maybe not listening tonight, but will be seeing this public input from me, or maybe reading it, and they will grow catatonic. They will become as enraged as the Trump and Republican faction, the racists and the transphobic and well, quite frankly, the basket of deplorables that live in the United States. And so I would ask us here to put that aside. And I ask us to be inclusive. And thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you, Council, for being inclusive. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker I have is Erica Crutzen. And I believe Erica is joining us virtually. And so Erica, you're going to see a box pop up. There you go. Okay, good. Okay.
Hi.
Erica, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As you know, my name is Erica Crutzen, and I live in the Moodyville area near the site of the proposed towers. This is my first time speaking to council about this issue. I'm here tonight to respectfully but firmly ask that you do not approve towers in the Moodyville and that you honor the official community plan. Moodyville was carefully planned after extensive consultation with the community between residents and the city. That process led to a shared vision of a livable low to medium density neighborhood, and many of us bought here, trusting that vision and the city's commitment to it. The mayor has also stated publicly there would be no towers in this area. I'm asking that you stand by those words. Over the past several years, Moodyville has already contributed to the growth in North Vancouver, adding many new apartments and townhouses, but this has all happened without matching infrastructure upgrades. Our roads are very congested, schools are full, hospitals have longer and longer wait times. Adding towers without addressing these issues isn't sustainable. If people are wanting to live in the towers, there are areas that already support that kind of density, like Lonsdale, where the infrastructure and transit are designed for it. Moodyville is more of a residential family-focused community, and high-rises simply don't fit here. Finally, I'd just like to raise a concern about a potential conflict of interest connected to this proposal. I believe that deserves open discussion and transparency before a decision is made. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Crutzen. I will point out that I think you're referring to the City of North Vancouver's discussions about development down by Moodyville. At this moment, you're connected to the District of North Vancouver's council meeting. The city does have a council meeting tonight running simultaneously, and perhaps if you head over to cnv.org, you'll be able to connect to their meeting as well. But thank you for your comments here this evening. Okay, would anybody else, I thought there was a third person? Withdraw, okay. Would anybody else like to address the council meeting? Yes, welcome, Mr. Lesso, come on up. And I have a virtual participant next, Corey Cost as well. When you're comfortable, Mr. Lesso, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. John Lesso, 10-year resident of Edgemont and past director of the Upper Capilano Community Association, as well as the Edgemont Community Association. I've been here about 10 years. I trust you have all received the link that I sent earlier today to the Western Investor article concerning housing. The current glut of rental housing on the market now has led to a renter's market, leading to 10% price drops so far, and that includes adding free amenities, parking, and utilities for prospective renters. It's a renter's market. So we are not under any pressure to build anything right now. In 2017, I prepared a PowerPoint presentation on the desirability of renovating existing housing stock in apartments and duplexes on Capilano Road, right down from the suspension bridge. And no one really paid attention to this truly affordable housing option because, well, they didn't. And they were subsequently demolished for a surface parking lot, which is still sitting there today unused. I prepared another PowerPoint on the scourge of graffiti, but I won't get into that, but the graffiti is still there and worse than ever. I mention this to illustrate that the simple low-cost solutions are often better than complicated ones, and that these density mandates that you're now under consideration are an aberration, and they will be thrown out when the government changes soon. I was a planning commissioner in Whatcom County for 8 years, from 2005 to 2013, before moving back to North Vancouver. And before these crazy, unworkable densities were imposed by Governor Bob Ferguson and Premier David Eby in BC. Planning, though, is always and has always been a function of local government. It's not a top-down function. I do urge each council member to drive the routes from North Vancouver, south into Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, as I do every day, and deal firsthand with those consequences of crowding and congestion, and ask yourself, is the quality of life in North Vancouver better today than it was 5 years ago or 10 when I moved here? Your honest answer, I suggest, would be a resounding no. Councilmember Ma, you suggested at your last meeting that the Lionsgate Emergency Hospital was not equipped to deal with a large influx of patients with no increase in infrastructure. And in the past 30 days, I have had to visit that emergency room twice, once for myself and once for a family member. So you are correct. You can't add more people without building and improving infrastructure. I submit you should not have voted for option A or option B at your last meeting, and instead should have moved to table the resolution and had your legal counsel present an analysis of whether or not this is even worthwhile doing. Thank you very much.
Very much for your comments, Mr. Lesso. Anything you leave in the black tray will get shared with council, scanned and shared with council. Thank you. Right, virtual participant Corey Cost, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. On my daily perusal through upcoming events, I came across what Patrick Condon has termed as a quiet revolution in BC planning. And that, of course, is, and you're probably not familiar with it, I certainly wasn't until a few hours ago, about Bill M, as in mother, 216. I have sent council an email on this, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it looks pretty dangerous to the democracy of the local government system, in that it imposes to have professional governance done over the municipality's will. So it's called, therefore, the Professional Reliance Act. In some ways, we've all seen the erosion of the local council's powers. This seems to be a pretty big step further in that direction. So I just urge council, when they have some time, to look in and ask staff maybe as well to do their own analysis about Bill M 216. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Corey Cost. Would anybody else like to address the council this evening? If you're a virtual participant, raise your virtual hand. Okay, I think we've exhausted the public speakers list, so we're going to move on with this evening's agenda. The next item up for discussion this evening is delegation. And so I'd love to welcome up Silver Harbor and their representatives to the presenters area here. And just while you're getting ready, I'll just describe a delegation is a little bit different from a regular opportunity to speak to council. It's a 5-minute opportunity to make a presentation from a nonprofit organization within the community. At the end of that time, council members are able to ask questions about their proposal or their organization. And so there's a 5-minute presentation followed by a little bit of back and forth between the council and the delegates. So welcome. And, you know, Anwin, I don't know if you want to introduce your delegation to start us off.
Certainly. Thank you very much for allowing us to come before you as a delegation tonight. My name is Anwin Lovren, and I'm the Executive Director of Silver Harbor Seniors Activity Center. And this is Richard Gauntlet, who is the President of the Board at Silver Harbor. Tonight, we're providing an update on our programming and our operations, as well as our new building, which is coming in 2026. So briefly, as many of you on council will likely know, we engage with a lot of seniors, over 3,000 seniors in the course of each year. We offer about 75 programs and services at Silver Harbor, and we do so with quite a small staff team of 6 full-time employees, plus more than 200 volunteers who provide the equivalent of the work of 20 employees. We design our programming to have beneficial and positive impacts, things like social connectedness, resilience, mental and physical health, and so on. And I wanted to just let you know about 2 recent projects that we have engaged in. First of all is our 50 Amazing Lives project, which was a celebration of the 50th anniversary of Silver Harbor, with 50 stories of seniors that are connected with Silver Harbor. And we have a copy for each of the members of council tonight. It is, it's great. And the stories really, really express and celebrate the impact that Silver Harbor has. We've also nearly completed our most recent project, which is an accessibility, inclusion, and impact survey with over 500 seniors contributing. Key takeaways, of course, around the social connection and the importance of it, the social connection that Silver Harbor provides, but also concerns expressed around parking, around the fact that many of our programs are full or have wait lists, and also the intense desire for additional operating hours and additional programming. Very briefly, our operations are supported with a budget of about 1.5 million, and we're extremely grateful for, within our revenues, the 30% of revenues that come to us as municipal grants from the district and the city of North Vancouver. And the balance of those revenues are coming from other less sustainable, less reliable grants and donations, and earned revenues from program fees. Our expenses are principally staffing, as well as those program expenses, building costs, and administration. And I'm going to turn it over to Richard to talk a bit about our new building that's coming next year.
And very, very briefly, again, from myself and from the board, thank you for this opportunity. We're excited about the new building. You probably already know that it's on the corner of East 23rd Street and St. George's, part of the new Harry Jerome Community Recreation Center. Altogether, we will be moving from about gross area, about 18,000 to about 20,000 square feet. There's a small increase of about 1,000 square feet in program space. Actually, the same number of rooms in the building, but the layout is better, and some of the rooms are just slightly larger. We're very much echoing what we already have with art facilities, with pottery, with woodworking, and perhaps most importantly, because our single biggest program is our lunch program, a commercial grade kitchen. So the building, of course, is designed to modern standards, not only LEED standard environmentally, but also is much more accessible and sustainable. So the corridors are wider, the washrooms are bigger, the elevator is a lot better. And so it's a much more modern facility than the one we have now, which we've been in for more than 50 years. And of course, the windows are well lit with effective shades and so on, and safe and smooth walking surfaces, which is really important for everybody, but especially for seniors. We've been working with a consultant on our move readiness, as well as on procurement of new furniture and equipment. We're also working actively with the gerontology department in Simon Fraser University, both on a change management program. So we're documenting change, as well as several other programs that we can talk about later if you have any questions. We expect the move to be probably May, June next year. And we think there'll be a gap of 2 or 3 weeks when we actually have to close, but we'll try and keep that to a minimum. And because our time is short, I'll pass back to Anwen.
Briefly, with your indulgence, Council, may I continue?
Sorry, hang on.
Your
just a
worship.
Wow. All right, keep going, please.
Just a minute more. Thank
That's
you.
fine.
With our new building, we recognize that there's many new opportunities. Of course, we already all see the increasing numbers of seniors, the increasing diversity of the seniors population, and for some seniors, more complex support needs. And this, along with the increased visibility of a new facility, provides the basis for our desire to expand operating hours by adding a half day on Saturday. And of course, to reinforce that importance of outreaching to seniors who have barriers to participation and including them. We know that there will be challenges such as managing parking around the new facility, but we're already collaborating with Harry Jerome's staff on this and other issues, such as how to share information once we're in our closer buildings, as well as how to share spaces to maximize use and to make sure that we're programming together as well. Another challenge will be our building operating costs. There will be an increase to those costs in the new facility, adding about 10% to our overall budget, 20% if we are able to expand our operating hours. And equipping the new center, including the kitchen, will be costing us about $1 million. So in conclusion, we have launched our fundraising campaign, focusing both on equipping and operating the building, centering on major donations and grants. We know that there'll be, although we've been doing that significant financial planning, that there'll be that opportunity to really finalize the operating budget after the first year, and we will be sure to come back to council to let you know all about our progress on this major milestone for Silver Harbor.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your presentation. Councillor Back, you had some questions and comments?
Thank you. I'll move receipt of the report, the delegation.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Moss, second speaker. You got it. Yeah, got it. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Back.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Ms. Lover and Mr. Gauntlet, for your presentation here tonight. Thank you for everything that Silver Harbor does for our community and has done for decades to connect with seniors in our community. For me, the memories goes back to high school and singing in choirs, usually around the holiday season. So certainly have fond memories of Silver Harbor and the work you do. Just picking up on one of the challenges that you talk about with the senior population that's growing, challenges like parking. I'm wondering if you've given any thought down the line about a network of smaller, like potentially satellite facilities in partnership perhaps with the district that could extend your reach in other parts of the district or the community.
I think, and Anwen can answer in more detail, when we realized that we weren't going to have a significant increase in the amount of space in the new building, and that had to do with budgets and Harry Jerome and so on, we started to look, at least conceptually, at what our options were. And one of them, as Anwen just briefly referred to, is expanding our operating hours. At the moment, we run Monday to Friday, and now we're looking with the new building to hopefully open on Saturday mornings as a starting point. So that's one solution. And the other solution, of course, as you rightly point out, is to expand, not to think of our 4 walls as the limit of the world after which you fall off, but rather to look at other opportunities. We've been very absorbed in all the work that's been involved with the redevelopment.
Sure.
So we haven't gone a lot further than thinking about it conceptually. But it's certainly an option that we would be happy to explore in the future.
That's great. Yeah, completely appreciate that the focus would be on the new facility, which will be a tremendous asset for the whole community. Just one more question, and it's around significant changes that you may have seen in terms of the needs of older adults over the years. You mentioned the lunch program is your most popular program. Are there any changes or trends that you might be able to share?
Certainly. So some of you who might have made it to the North Shore Assembly of Elected Leaders would have heard some of these comments around issues and trends. With longevity often comes complexity. And so what we see at Silver Harbor is some people presenting with more complicated medical scenarios, whether that be physical health related or mental health related. So we see a great increase in complexity, and we're always trying to make sure we're meeting people where they're at. And that means that our call is to provide more individualized service, which is more resource intensive, but more impactful for individuals. So I'd say that overall is sort of the trend that we see. We see a lot of issues and concerns around transportation, around food security, and around affordability in all of its forms, whether that be for housing or other major needs.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Back, Councillors Ma, Pope, Hanson, and Murray. Councillor Ma.
Thank you very much for the presentation and also for the email support for the aging and older person strategy report coming tonight. When I looked at your presentation, I was amazed by the number of volunteers you have, and on average, they're doing 100 hours. I'm curious to know, are the volunteers, like, what are their demographics? Do you have students coming in? Do you have younger people? Do you have older people? Or and how do you get them?
That's some great questions. And so we do have volunteers of all ages, but there's definitely a preponderance of volunteers who are no longer working full time and older volunteers. However, it's through partnership with other organizations that we're able to sort of introduce Silver Harbor and our volunteer opportunities to others. So we have strong cooperation with organizations who serve adults and younger adults who may have cognitive or intellectual disabilities or who may have mental illnesses. We've also made great strides in including volunteers for whom English is a second language, volunteers who are newcomers or new immigrants in our volunteer corps. And as you probably know, the trend in volunteerism has been hampered by people's personal finances and by caregiving duties, both for children and older adults, meaning that people tend to have less time and less resources to volunteer. So we're definitely being very clever with our outreach and making sure that we and our partners are connecting to people who want to volunteer and doing that really good matching so that volunteer roles are satisfying and people want to continue on with them.
That's great. I did notice all the community partners, and I believe you do have like a seniors table that you meet with.
Yes, so through your worship. So yes, Councillor Ma, there's two tables that deal with seniors issues on the North Shore. One is the Seniors Coalition, and that tends to meet, it's full of nonprofits, also municipal representatives and businesses, and that meets really around issue identification, that larger trend analysis. Then we have a North Shore Seniors Working Group that meets around service provision and how to best align our services as nonprofits so that we're making maximum impact.
Oh, that's great. And this may be one last comment to Richard. Hopefully we can save some time for a tour in the new year.
We haven't done any tours, not even hard hat tours yet, because
when the building's ready.
what happened with the Harry Jerome project is with the pool and the rink going in, they had to concentrate on those facilities.
Okay.
Because they have to be tested and it's an extensive process. And our building, our part of the complex is much simpler. So they've sort of left it. If you've been watching it over the past few weeks, it's actually suddenly come along. There are windows in and so on, you know? So we haven't yet had any tours, but I think we will be trying to arrange tours as soon as we can, starting with our staff team and our board, obviously. And once the facility opens, we hope May, June next year, we'll get possession before that. but hopefully May, June, we will be both on our own and working with the city. We will be planning an official opening and tying in tours and welcoming activities as part of that.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to seeing you all.
Definitely.
Perhaps it's a good moment to mention that there are approximately, I believe I'm correct in saying this, Anne, approximately the same number of seniors at Silver Harbor from the district as there are from the city, even although it's located in the city. So we appreciate it.
Good. Councillor Pope, your comments, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we see those same numbers reflected in North Shore Neighborhood House
Yeah.
with the number of district people and the number of city people using the services at North Shore Neighborhood House. Anyway, thank you very much for all of the work and service that you provide to our community. It's so valuable. I wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about the lunch program and how that works.
Sure. So about, get my numbers right. Yeah. So about 25% of our visits, and we count about 500 visits per open day that we're open. So about a quarter of the visits are related to food. So you can see how important it is with 75 programs and services that the food program, our meal program, takes up 25% of the visits.
I just got lost in all your numbers.
Sorry.
So you said the food program is the most important.
Yes.
Because
So although we have 75 programs, the food program is the one that draws about 150 people per day
Okay.
out of the total 500 visits that are coming every
and
day.
how does that food program work?
So, as you can imagine, with the costs of food going up and up, it is actually one of the only services at Silver Harbor that is run at a loss, that has the direct costs subsidized. So in saying that, what I mean is that the prices that are very reasonable, the cost is about 30 to 35% more to produce those meals than is reflected in the prices, in the money that is paid every day. So typically at the rest of our programs and services, we price them, although low, to cover the direct costs. The cost of the table tennis balls and table tennis paddles are covered in the price of someone attending that program, not so in the food service. We have paid staff, 1.5, but at any given time, about 8 volunteers supporting those 2 paid staff. So highly volunteer driven in order to keep costs low. And then we do have some cooperative partnerships that allow us to do food recovery and low cost food coming into the kitchen for use in the kitchen itself.
Thank you for that explanation. So
Can I
you
just
serve
add something to that, and just, if I may, do a little, just to say that the 30 to 35% subsidy that Anwen's referred to was a conscious decision some years ago by the board, recognizing the importance of good food as one of the determinants of health for seniors. And so that's, and when we talk about subsidies, of course, we're not building in things for our other programs. We're not building in things like building costs and administration costs and so on. We're just basing it on the actual cost of running the program, you know, the instructor costs and the supplies and so on. But it is subsidized just to keep the prices reasonable. And for that reason, it's a very popular and we think important program.
Is that why your admin costs are so high? I was a little surprised to see that your admin expenses are 50% of the entire budget.
That is our staffing expense. One of the reasons that it is so high, if you will, is that all of the unpaid volunteer labor is not included in that budget. So if you actually factor all of those, I think we're at about 30,000 volunteer hours in. If you counted that as a resource, the staffing component would be a much, much, much smaller percentage. Just that we're not paying people to do the work and therefore it doesn't appear in the
How
budget.
does that compare though to other sort of senior services or senior centers? Like, does it usually run that high with admin costs?
For staffing, I would say, I can't speak necessarily for municipal situations, because those might be different. But for nonprofit, staffing takes up a large portion of what we do, provided that another portion of the work is done by volunteers.
Is that because of the complexity of the needs of the clients or?
In some ways, it's also a factor of our budget itself being quite small. It's not a $10 million
Yeah.
budget. It's a $1.5 million budget.
Right.
And we do want to make sure that there is sufficient attention to program quality and program impact. And at some point, staff involvement in that is a very good idea, just to make sure that the volunteers are rolling out programs in a really impactful and safe way.
Considering the volunteer strain, and I don't know if you already do this, but has there been any consideration to bringing in youth to fill that need? I'm thinking of the high school programs that require graduates to put in a certain number of community hours. Is that part of your recruitment at all for volunteers? Or?
We do. At the moment, we're hampered by our operating hours and that they mirror mirror school hours, weekday, daytime. However, we do have some youth coming right after school to assist. And then hopefully in the new building with a half-day Saturday opening, that will open up a whole lot of new volunteer opportunities for people to become involved who might not otherwise be able to.
Right, great.
Can I just add two other things about the budget, because you rightly pointed to a 50% kind of split, and a couple of other factors that I think are worth mentioning here. One is that part of it is that, you know, the 50% split is that is the wages cost. You know, we have 5.5 employees approximately, and we have made a commitment. We, as in the board, have made a commitment not to pay anyone less on an hourly basis than the current living wage in Metro Vancouver. And that was an ethical decision that we decided upon. The other one is that not only is the wage budget what it is, but the supplies budget is less than it would be if we weren't getting a significant amount of donated material, donated food, donated woodworking supplies and things like that. So that tips the balance a bit as well. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that you're an equal wage employer, a living wage employer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Anlin and Richard, for all that you do in our community. In my family, I've had 3 grandparents and 2 parents live into their 90s as retired seniors on the North Shore. And it's interesting because if you add up the amount of time that they spent as retired seniors, it was more, they did that more than they did anything else in their life. You know, 3 and 4 decades of time as retired seniors. And they were all different, each of these 5 people. They certainly, in some cases, really benefited from facilities, activities, and the chance to connect with other seniors across the North Shore, for sure. And in thinking about these 5 souls, certainly I'm aware of issues of social isolation and social connection, and the social connection was so much better than social isolation for seniors, and clearly it is an issue. I just wonder if you could comment on strategies that we can adopt to address the issue of social isolation among seniors, which as we think of this growing seniors cohort, I think has the potential to be a growing issue for us.
I can, sure. So, I mean, I would start out by saying that in the last decade, we've finally got the quantitative research that we needed to demonstrate the impacts of social isolation. So we clearly understand how bad it is for people's physical health and mental health and cognitive health included in that as well. So that, I think that research along with public awareness has been a real boon to having people want to, as they're able, reach out and become connected. So we know that social isolation for all ages, but particularly when you don't have, say, an employment to go to, or you aren't connected with as many members of your family. We understand the significance of isolation and the positive impact of connection. It is always, and has been for the 3 decades that I've worked with seniors, it has always been a puzzle to figure out how best to outreach to people. And we sort of operate by an all means necessary type of approach. What we know is that word of mouth is particularly effective, and that seniors themselves encouraging other seniors to be connected to people and programs is incredibly effective. So that peer network. But we also use, where we can, banks and pharmacies and doctors and health professionals to encourage seniors to get connected, A, to know about the services, and B, to get connected to places and people. So.
Councillor Hanson, Councillor Murray.
And how long have you been the executive director of Silver Harbor?
For 20 years.
For when you were first put into that position, and we're grateful that you stayed. And Richard, thank you for your work and your leadership at the board. It's very important. I'm pretty sure, I'm doing my math right now, but I'm pretty sure my grandma was one of the first members of Silver Harbor. When she moved out of Deep Cove, she moved into an apartment just across the street from the hospital on 15th on the corner. And she loved being social in the Cove. And she would walk up to Silver Harbor, and she would go to the lunches for the social part of it, to connect with people in the neighborhood. You know, our fear now is that a lot of people are going to the lunches because they're hungry. And grandma was never hungry, but she loved to visit. She was a tatter. She would tat, and she crocheted. And she loved to meet people and connect with them. And she spent many years at Silver Harbor. Even when she moved to Kiwanis and Lynn Valley, there was a bus that would take them to Silver Harbor. So transportation, tell us more about the challenges of transportation, because it is the biggest issue in the district. Issues of transportation, and no less seniors are being impacted by that. So give us a little bit more information on the concerns of the transportation.
Sure. So I had a brief hopeful moment in COVID that telehealth was going to solve all our transportation problems. And I do believe that the different ways in which we connect today have helped transportation somewhat. But transportation is obviously, as you know, essential for getting people to services, getting them engaged in programs. We see the everyday impact on our side of people either losing their transportation options or not being able to transition to other ones. So we do a large amount of information workshops on transportation options, and we do public transit-based expeditions so that people can learn how to use public transit. And we find that, again, in a peer environment, that's really helpful. We also work with a number of partners who, to be fair, are overwhelmed with requests for individual rides for individual purposes. Yeah. We ourselves are doing other transportation option training, such as Uber training, as well as the public transit, to give people some options and support, along with our partners, support people getting onto Handy Dart or getting the taxi savers.
Right. Issues?
Yes. So obviously, as you well have heard, in the city of North Vancouver around Lonsdale, there have been some big parking changes. Our focus has been on educating people on how to use the parking. Because I think that the concerns and fears around not being able to park are best fought with information and knowledge. So we've already started a series of seminars on how to use the parking meters, the parking app, and so on. We know also that a lot of people are giving each other rides, great for doubling up, not so many single user vehicles, but we want to make sure that people are supported to drive as long as they are able to safely and confidently do so. So we also offer those exit from driving seminars.
Right. Thank you.
So, yeah.
I know we're going to talk about some seniors work in Councillor Ma's motion that's on the end of the agenda tonight, and I look forward to that. I really hope that that motion can be referred actually to Silver Harbor and your team, because you seem to also, you're so informed about the needs of seniors, and we don't have a lot of senior staff anymore. I'm looking around. Well, okay, there's one and maybe one working on it, and maybe you too. Yeah, but we've got it. No, not you. Yeah, those guys.
Easy,
So,
Counselor.
so I think that you'd be a wealth of information to input into this motion that Councillor Ma's bringing forward. And I just based on Councillor Back's comment in regards to the satellites, you know, Parkgate has a really in-depth seniors program. They do meals. But I know just on the transportation piece, Mayor Little, I know that the theater in the Cove, which is a great outing for seniors, First Impressions at Deep Cove Stage at our cultural center in the Cove, they've been working with Parkgate because they have a bus, and there's some challenges right now that they're facing. It's the way for those seniors to get to that programming, and they're having a problem finding people with the Class 4 license to drive the bus. So what we thought was a solution a few years ago is now a quandary, and I'm going to get the mayor to get his Class 4. I'm going to work on that next week, and I might, yeah, start perusing some other opportunities for Class 4 licenses, because it is that level of volunteerism to get these people where they need to go. And you know, when my dad was a member of the Lions, you know, they did a huge amount of work. It's hard to get people to get to that level in volunteering these days. It's not like the old days where everybody volunteered in some way for many, many years, and you had that sustained consistency of people, and it's a challenge. So thank you for all your work. Thank you for your passion for the most experienced people in our community. And we look forward to working with you in that tour. Yes. Looking forward to that.
Those tours.
Yes, those tours. Thank you.
I'm open to it.
If I can, may a little just to say that the other thing that we've been exploring is transit. And, you know, we're probably about the same distance from Lonsdale as we were before, but perhaps a little bit easier to find in the new facility. We have worked through the city with transit to see, and so far without success, I should say, to see if they would be willing to consider rerouting one of the buses round to St. George's and back along 23rd. And at the moment, that would be the 229 or the 230. And at the moment, they're not willing to do that because they have certain criteria that they use, the grade of the sidewalks and distance and so on and so forth. And this doesn't quite fall within the limits that they've set themselves for where you put a bus route. But that doesn't mean that that couldn't change in the future. And I think that if we could find a bus that would I mean, it actually work for a number of things, including lawn bowling and flicker and all sorts of things that are now going on in that east of Lonsdale area. Yeah. So that's another option that we'll continue to explore.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Most of my colleagues have already asked a lot of questions I was going to ask. So just a couple of quick questions. And I don't know if you can give this kind of information or not. We have talked other times with Neighborhood House about seniors who are alone sharing accommodation. And I wonder, do you do any kind of program that tries to connect that? And can you give us any idea of the seniors that come? Is there a lot that are still living alone, or?
Those are great questions. So I would say, so we know that about 50% of the people coming to Silver Harbor are low income. I don't have a value for how many are living alone.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sort of thinking through a scan of the day, and it's a significant proportion of people live alone. And so to your point about housing, so we did sit with Hollyburn Family Services on an advisory committee to try to move forward with this roommate idea or
yeah.
shared accommodation idea. In the end, there was insufficient funding to launch the pilot. So it's too bad. I know that SFU is doing a senior student pairing project for, within housing and accommodation. But on the North Shore, at the moment, that project isn't moving forward for lack of funding. And there are great models. New York City, for example, has an excellent, fully built out model around senior and senior shared accommodation.
I'm just curious, what kind of budget were they looking at to get that going?
I think, it was well under 100,000 a year in order to have the coordinator and the matching process, all of the liability covered and so on. So,
We need to work on that.
yeah.
My other question is just as far as parking. Just from my own going into the city, I try not to as much as I stay away from the city because it's too hard to get parking. But I do have a dentist in that area, so, and I also go to a drugstore in that area. So in talking with a couple of businesses along Lonsdale, there were some concerns about seniors. Number one, it didn't roll out very well because there were two apps that you could go into, and one was right and one wasn't right. The seniors who had mobility issues, then trying to get to where you could pay for it was another issue. And I was curious, I don't often run into like a lot of seniors that don't have phones, but can you tell me from the seniors that you work with, do most of them all have a mobile phone that they can use for this type of thing?
I would say the vast majority do. Whether they're all smartphones or not, I can't say for sure because some of them might just be, an older style phone, mostly used for phoning or texting. And then I never want to underestimate the knowledge that seniors have around technology. So we all know sort of the myth that seniors don't engage with technology. It is a myth, and it's the, seniors are the fastest growing population of technology adopters, maybe, a ways to go still, but a lot of tech onboarding. And that's why our focus really was on helping people learn all of the rules and learn how to access the parking. People without a designated disability often use their cars as a mobility device. And I don't want us to forget that often people's vehicles are used as a way to connect them to important places and people. Even if they don't have a disability permit, for example, the car can be really essential in keeping people connected. I know we want to minimize that, but we do need to recognize that there are some people that use it as a mobility device.
Great, thank you very much.
Can I just add to that one of the projects we've worked with Simon Fraser University on is seniors and technology. I think the report's just about done now for that. And there was a series of workshops, both at Silver Harbor and also another organization that I was involved with in Vancouver called the 411 Senior Center. And it was a series of workshops where seniors were invited to come in and discuss how they use technology, if they use technology, if not, why not, and so on. And although Anwen's absolutely correct in saying that most seniors do have a phone, not all of them do, first of all. Secondly, not all of them, those who do have phones, are familiar with apps. Thirdly, not everybody has data as part of their cell phone. They use text and phone, but not data. And fourthly, not everybody's comfortable with uploading their visa information onto their phone. We found in the workshops that we did, for example, there are a number of seniors, not a majority by any means, but a significant minority who won't touch online banking because they're suspicious of it and they are afraid of being hacked and so on, and not without reason. So, I'm not here tonight to really get into a discussion on paid parking as such, but simply to say that how it's done rather than whether it's done really matters.
Yeah.
And the alternative at the moment to using the app is to find one of the pay stations. And when you find a pay station, it's not too difficult to use, but there aren't very many pay stations, and neither is there any signage that tells you where to go and find a
There
pay
they are.
station. So that's becoming a challenge. I'm hoping that will be solved, or we're hoping, but that is a challenge right now. And our understanding for the new center, Silver Harbor has 18 designated parking spaces, or they're dedicated to Silver Harbor during the hours that we're open. It's our understanding that the rest of the parking and the Harry Jerome will be paid parking, so that as people overflow the 18 spaces that we have, there will be a cost associated with that. And there's very, very limited street parking in that particular neighborhood. So that parking and transportation generally will continue to be a problem, and we'll keep working on it, as I said, with transit and various other solutions. But so far, it's still a problem.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Maybe citing a paid parking kiosk at.
I'm sure there will be some in the rec center facility, but as well. But no, thank you so much for coming today and discussing this. I mean, these are all very important issues for us to address. I didn't know that the food program was as widespread as you reported today, so I definitely learned something new about that. I know the food program out at Parkgate, as an example, is a very popular program. I don't know how much of it is addressing needs, so like a food need as much as an isolation need, trying to get people out and be social and others. But I know my mom is a regular attender and participator in those programs at that facility as well. I'm sure when we get the new facility going, I'll take her for a walk around of the and check out your facility as well. Absolutely. I was the director of transportation for the BC Seniors Games and getting seniors around the community with buses and everything for all of their activities and events back in the day. But you know, I've been a driver for Rotary Club for a number of years, so I just don't have the class 4 yet, but I'm open to it. But other than that, I just want to say it's a very exciting time for your organization. You're opening a new facility. That's something generationally you don't do that on a regular basis, and so we're just very excited for you and your members at that exciting time. And if there's anything we can do to help support and participate in the opening and support your profile at that time, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be happy to come out and promote it and come out and share in your excitement of the opening of your new facility. Council, looking for a receipt of the delegation. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question on receipt. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. On behalf of the council, thank you for your delegation.
And thank you.
Right. I'm not going to be proposing a consent agenda, as I think all of these items are, you know, are up for discussion. And so, council, we're going to return to the regular order of the agenda for reports here. The first item up for discussion is item 8.1. This is the DAPR update and proposed changes to development permits, minor development variance permits, and public hearings. We have Graham and Lisa and Dan. I think Dan's going to provide a few. Dan Milburn, General Manager, is going to provide a few opening comments, and then we'll move it over to Graham.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff are pleased to present this update on the Development Application Process Review, or DAPR. I would like to start by providing some brief introductory comments, which will be followed by a presentation by Graham Budge, DAPR Program Coordinator, and Lisa Stallum, Section Manager, Administration and Continuous Improvement. To set the context, we find ourselves in a period of rapid change that Council, staff, and community members are reading about, trying to comprehend, and rapidly respond to, including a series of changes to the Local Government Act that fundamentally change local government's powers, duties, and functions related to land use planning and development management. These regulatory changes have also coincided with evolving market conditions for housing development. The evolving legislative framework and changing market conditions lend further support to our ongoing efforts to, as described in tonight's staff report, to elevate the customer journey, streamline our work, and build our capacity. Tonight's staff presentation will therefore provide council with a snapshot of staff's DAPR efforts. In addition, staff have prepared some recommended changes to certain bylaws that require council consideration and approval before they can be implemented. I would like to assure council that the recommended bylaw amendments in tonight's report do not represent the sum total of staff's ongoing DAPR work, nor the final recommendations for change that staff will be bringing to council. In the spirit of continuous improvement, there will be more to come. For example, the district will be accepting on-demand surety bonds for development cost charge installment payments by the end of this year. As well, there is an ongoing zoning bylaw update with fewer zones and clearly worded regulations intended to improve bylaw interpretation and land use regulation. That will be brought to council in the future. While our DAPR work is ongoing, staff feel there are some bylaw changes that will improve various application review processes and processing timelines. Staff look forward to presenting these recommendations tonight and answering questions that council may have regarding the recommended changes. Thank you, Mayor Little. Mr. Budge and Ms. Stallum are available to provide the DAPR update presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public that are present. My name is Graham Budge. I'm the development planner and the DAPR program coordinator. And this is my manager, Lisa Stallum, section manager of administration and continuous improvement in the Planning, Properties and Permits division. Tonight's presentation is to provide an update on the DAPR program and to present to council for their consideration 2 proposed bylaws that improve the development application and review process. The presentation is 10 minutes in length. Lisa will now start with the DAPR program update.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. We'll start with a brief reminder of the DAPR program to date. Since the council workshop in March 2023, we continued to achieve quick wins while the consultant conducted their in-depth review. They provided their final report and recommendations last fall, and having dedicated their necessary resources, we launched the implementation phase in January of this year. Shown here is a high-level timeline for the 3-year implementation plan. We're now a quarter of the way through, as shown in red, and we're on schedule and on budget. We've heard from council an urgency to address known and familiar issues. As some of the changes we are making are comprehensive and complex, we are taking the time needed to accomplish lasting change, and we continue to make quick wins as we move forward. You can see here that we started this year with a focus on culture. As council has discussed previously, for DAPR to succeed, we need to look at our culture to shift it toward innovation and to make sure service remains job 1. As recommended by the consultants, as recommended by the consultants, these activities were strategically addressed at the outset as they lay the foundation for the sustained improvements we want to see. We started with change management training provided by KPMG to build the internal capacity for transformation across the development work areas. We then initiated our work around service excellence. And to look at service, we benefit from some context. Shown on screen is just a snapshot of some of the communication channels in the district. We see here that development service clerks received over 40,000 customer service requests in the last year. And of course, all of this work filters to all the other departments involved in development. To advance our service culture, we're working with the Service Leadership Program through the Gustafson School of Business at the University of Victoria. This program has a proven track record through their work with NVRC. These shifts in culture will facilitate achieving our DAPR goals. The goals we've distilled into the trio shown on screen. To provide details on progress toward these goals, we created the DAPR report card that was included in the council package and will be updated quarterly on our website. As the report card illustrates, staff have been busy this year with many initiatives, including investigating ways to provide better support online. We conducted this by surveying and interviewing recent applicants. The work now enables us to reimagine the end-to-end online experience for applicants. Started to rebuild the significant development applications section on the website. We're exploring opportunities to consolidate related application types to simplify it for applicants. And most significantly, we completed the detailed review of the current process for single-family new construction building permits. The detailed review is the first step in the review and redesign cycle that we'll be repeating for each application process. The outcome of this first redesign is the new review process that staff are piloting to increase efficiency for single-family building permits. This new process was designed collaboratively by the interdepartmental team who do this work. It aims to address many of the most frequent and frustrating pain points. The pilot process involves early, thorough, and coordinated reviews to identify potential issues up front and to work with applicants to resolve them and ultimately reduce timelines. The pilot is just one example of a change resulting from the first of these process review and redesign cycles. And now to consider the recommendations before you tonight, I'll pass you back to Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, good evening, Mayor and members of council. I just want to preface this part of the presentation by, before moving into the recommended bylaw improvements. Council has provided direction to staff to streamline and simplify process. And as Lisa mentioned, the project work under the DAPR umbrella involves methodical review and redesign in sectors across the PPP division, the Planning, Properties, and Permits division. The recommended bylaw amendments tonight complement the ongoing customer service improvements and the process reviews that are underway. These bylaw amendments represent quick wins, largely within the development planning sector, and council's support will allow efficiencies for both the applicant and the organization. As mentioned in the report, the bylaw amendments are supported by several district policy documents, the recommendations from the expert consultancy phase of the DAPR program, and are aligned with the intent of the enabling legislation. Moving on to the recommended changes. First, an improvement to the development permit process. The main change involves delegating to staff the authority for one of the forming character permit types. For context, here on screen, focusing on the purple, shows areas of industrial land use. When we consider these areas of the district, they're typically large, well-established, and isolated areas. And because of that, they are typically self-buffering. Staff have heard from council and the business community, and the recommendation tonight would support the district's regionally important industrial employment lands. And here's an example of such a site, the industrial lands near West First Street. Imagine a business wanting to construct an improvement in this area. It's largely out of sight. It's not easily or regularly accessed by the general public and involves minimal impact within the scale of its own area. The recommendation tonight would allow situations like this to be dealt with in a more efficient way. I just want to note that the form and character guidelines must still be followed, and that's part of staff's regular duties when reviewing applications. But in case of industrial development such as this, the guidelines are quite minor in scope, so it represents a good candidate for delegation and streamlining of process and an efficient use of council's time. So moving on to the recommended improvement to the variance permit process. Currently, council must deal with variances required as a condition of subdivision. The proposal would amend the procedures bylaw to delegate this type of request to be a staff decision. A reminder that minor variances relate to the siting, size, and dimension of buildings or structures, as well as off-street parking. And in 2023, council delegated minor variances to staff. Again, in 2025, as part of the ongoing conversation, council delegated to staff the authority for minor variances related to coach houses. Tonight's recommendation is to continue that conversation and delegate the same authority for minor variances related to subdivision. On screen is an example of such a request for a variance, where a small corner of an existing house projects into the setback area. The proposed amendment would allow cases such as this to be dealt with at the staff level and will streamline the processing of subdivisions, which are known to be a lengthy case type. Now moving on to the recommended improvement to the public hearing process, which I remind everyone relates to rezonings where the public hearing process is optional under the provincial legislation. Since the legislation came into effect, council has resolved on several occasions to not hold a public hearing. But currently, for these types of rezonings, staff come to council in advance of bylaw readings for that agreement. This adds about 4 weeks to the timeline and associated costs to the applicant and to the district. The procedural improvement and accompanying guidelines would allow staff to bring a zoning bylaw forward to council in a more efficient way. In this new procedure, staff are directed to proceed with notification that a public hearing will not be held when in alignment with the guidelines. This has no impact on council's ability to hold a public hearing. And I just want to stress that again, this change does not prevent public hearing process, but rather adds a more efficient process should the guidelines be met. Council can still resolve to hold a public hearing anytime throughout the process. As a reminder, staff use a variety of notification methods and feedback associated with planning applications that ensure robust engagement occurs whether a public hearing process is held or not. These methods will continue to be used prior to council's consideration of a bylaw. In summary, council provided direction to improve process efficiency and timelines, and staff recommend voting in support of these proposed bylaw amendments. The DAPR program is on schedule and within budget, and staff will continue to provide regular updates. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. This is a pretty substantive change. I think I'm just like we did a couple of big items recently where we have an opportunity for council to ask questions first before we put a motion on the floor. I guess I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask just to start off here. So which public hearings that are optional now would now be pre-advertised as not being a required public hearing? So I think this is attachment 6 is subject matter. Would that be across all classes of property, but as in business classes, single family, light industrial, everything? Basically, if it's not required, then our default position is that there is no public hearing. That's the intent across all classes?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So long as it's policy compliant, compliant with the OCP policies, it's eligible for not holding a public hearing. But we've gone further. We've proposed guidelines that will guide staff's recommendation to not hold a public hearing. So council can rely on staff making a recommendation based on guidelines 1 through 8.
Okay, so it would have to be compliant in those other ways as well before it would meet that test.
That's correct.
The thing I'd be concerned about in the timeline, though, is there a scenario where we've advertised it to the public that there won't be a public hearing, and then it gets to council and council goes, well, actually, this is a complex enough issue, close enough neighbors that we decide to have a public hearing? I don't necessarily want a situation to have been created where we've already advertised out to the public that not to expect a public hearing, and then we go out and add one at a later stage anyway.
Yeah, Your Worship, I understand the question, and there is a risk that we could incorrectly notify, but I believe with the use of those guidelines and understanding council's history of resolving when to not hold a public hearing, that staff can make accurate recommendations and should notification need to reoccur, that is something that can be done.
Okay, so it should say, Mr. Milburn probably should say
Yeah.
that it is not required to have one. Council will decide at this point whether to have one or.
Yeah, I think it's useful to compare to the current process. So just to back up for a moment, council will recall the provincial government changed the legislation such that if a bylaw is compliant with the official community plan, a public hearing is optional. Also, if the bylaw is compliant with the official community plan and a residential project, then the public hearing is prohibited. In the cases where it's not a residential project and compliant with the OCP, so it's optional, what the Act requires is that we send out, we have a conversation with council before the bylaw even gets in front of you. And we have a conversation about the notice. And then we bring forward a subsequent date, the bylaw for consideration. Okay, so it's inefficient in that process. What we're proposing is that we would essentially advertise that council will be considering the bylaw in the future, and then we would receive feedback, written feedback from people, and we would share that with council, and staff would evaluate that. And then by the time the bylaw comes to council, we could have a conversation about whether or not a public hearing might be appropriate at that time, and certainly add in a public hearing notice into the procedure.
Yeah,
so by doing it in that fashion, it's more efficient and addresses this kind of extra process we currently go through.
I just want to be clear that in the communications that we've thought about how to plan for that possibility, because you don't want to be telling the community there will not be a public hearing and then council hasn't actually had a chance to decide on that. So a couple more questions. This one's kind of combined, but again, can you just describe for us what a form and character DP is?
Yeah, Your Worship, the form and character development permit area is contained in Schedule B of the official community plan. So development that is within the form and character development permit area needs to obtain a development permit prior to obtaining a building permit. And the recommendation tonight relates to industrial and business park guidelines of the form and character development permit area.
But it's not typically use or density. It is form and massing, maybe setbacks, height limitations. Those are the nature of them. Mr. Milburn?
Thank you, Richard. Happy to provide that clarification. A development permit cannot change the permitted use and density under the zone. Form and character, let's just compare this to other forms of development permits. So we have development permits that deal with issues like the environmental conditions. So setbacks from an environmentally sensitive area. We have development permits that deal with hazardous conditions. So ensuring that a geotechnical report is reflected in the development. Those types of permits are all approved by staff right now. They're technical approvals. We also have a host of form and character permits for residential and industrial and commercial development. And form and character typically has to do with the aesthetics, the overall general feel and form of the building, how people approach the building. Where is the entrance? Is it obvious for people when they come to it? These types of kind of how people experience the space, conversations. At the end of the day, they're also a useful tool that you can actually vary regulatory standards at that time as well. So council in some cases makes decisions around doing a variance concurrently with the rezoning, with a development permit. The one thing I also note is development permits don't trigger offsite works either. Offsite works are triggered by subdivision or building permit. So it's a limited tool. It must be issued if the guidelines are complied with. So it's not a discretional tool like a rezoning or a variance permit. So it's a limited tool, and form and character is generally around the aesthetic and the look and how people come to the space and appreciate it, but does not must essentially comply with the zoning bylaw standards either way. So.
But the height and massing of the building is not generally considered form and character, or that could be varied under this new process?
Yeah, so height, if the applicant proposes a development which is consistent with the zoning bylaw height, then the development permit would be issued. But there may be discussions about the building articulation, building massing, building ornamentation. There will be comments, how does the building relate to the space is near it? the development near it. And that's why form and character permits are so important for commercial development, especially abutting a residential area or residential developments abutting lower density residential. Not as important, which is why staff are recommending in the heart of the light industrial or heavy industrial areas, that kind of interface is usually straightforward guidelines. They're usually not as complex. Thank you.
You describe a minor variance. What do you mean by minor? You showed an example of a situation that I think reasonable people would look at it and go, all right, fine, that's pretty minor. But if minor is left to judgment, is it 5% into a setback? Is it 10%? Is it a planner's interpretation of what's minor? How do we get to minor?
Your worship, the definition of minor here in the district it's defined in the development procedures bylaw. So it's in the definitions section. And as I mentioned in the presentation, minor variances relate to citing setback dimensions of buildings or structures. And the local government, the district of North Vancouver has gone so far as defining what isn't more of an exemption criteria. So an exclusionary criteria. So minor is what's in development procedures bylaw definition section 2D Roman numerals, and that's it. I can draw your attention to the report attachment where it's defined. One moment.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at, Mr. Budge, is that if it's not prescriptive, it's a judgment call. And so then the question becomes, define have the attachments, but it talks about what the nature of a minor variance could be, but it doesn't put a measure on it. So it doesn't say 5% into a setback is considered a minor variance. 4 feet into a peak height variance is considered a minor variance. Like that, there doesn't appear to be any specifics in it. So it returns to an interpretation judgment question.
That's right. And we haven't defined specific magnitudes of variance, but the schedule to the development procedures bylaw has, again, review consideration guidelines that staff use and staff in assessing the impact of the variance. And so the magnitude or the impact of the variance is considered on a case-by-case basis during application review, and that's how assessment is made.
Just want to verify that there's the notifications section that is listed in here doesn't represent any changes. It doesn't appear to represent any changes. Is that, or are there changes in notification that I'm not reading right into this?
You're referring, Your Worship, you're referring to the notification section with respect to the public hearing change?
And engagement methods, middle of package 44, page 6 of this. There's a whole listing of the existing notification tools and such, but none of it appears to be amended. So I'm assuming there's no change to those notification tools?
That's correct. So Your Worship and Council as well, just to be clear, those are the notification tools and the feedback methods used to gather public input throughout typical applications, planning applications, and there's no change associated with the notification for such cases. And that was meant to highlight that we use a robust robust suite of notification procedures, and they will continue despite a public hearing potentially being recommended to not be held.
Totally reasonable, but it was listed, so I was worried that maybe it was representing a change somewhere. That's fine. My last question at this point would be subdivision in single family. Do any of these changes change the nature of subdivision in single family, or was the subdivision clause specific to the business pieces that were identified?
There's no, so Maybe, could you repeat the question just so I
Yeah,
make sure
so-
I understand it
So
correctly?
there's a section here that is about subdivision
Yes.
and about making the subdivision process simpler. But I think it's referring to business and light industrial and business spaces. Is it actually including multifamily and single family as well in that subdivision process? And if so, what's changed from the current process over how we handle subdivision?
So subdivision, the context of the amendment relates mostly to the subdivision of residential properties, I should say. There are occasions where non-single-family residential, non-detached residential properties are subdivided, but that's typically a much simpler process. The context of the amendment is intended to streamline the subdivision of residential properties, creating one or more residential lots. So, yes, well, I should say not related to business properties. This is intended to be focused on subdivision of detached residential lots.
So I just want to be clear about that. So the approving officer already has the ability to engage in subdivision. And so what's changed in the approving officer's authority in any way, shape, or form, or the steps that the approving officer would have to do? Mr. Milburn.
Under the Land Title Act, the approving officer, essentially based on legal decisions by the courts, must apply the bylaws of the district. So if the proposal is inconsistent with the zoning bylaw, it must be refused. If an applicant needs a variance in order to get approval, they would seek that from the district, and they would either apply to council and then possibly, if it was minor variance, be considered by staff, or they could apply to the Board of Variance in certain circumstances if it's an issue of hardship and it was minor. So for the approving officer, it's neither here nor there in terms of council's decision. Essentially, they just can't approve something that's inconsistent with council's bylaws unless they're varied, right? I would just add to Mr. Budge's response to in terms of minor variances. So council had a good look at minor variances previously when it was initially delegated. The definition of minor variance is provided in the Local Government Act and specifies that certain guidelines be put in place by bylaw that staff must follow. So there is quite a number of limitations in the development procedures bylaw about what a minor variance is. And it's a limited types of variances are limited in the act, but in the bylaw itself, it further limits what staff can look at. And it essentially includes a number of criteria that, the development really can't cause negative impacts in the neighborhood. And there's a lot of kind of evaluative criteria built into the procedures bylaw. And so staff are currently applying that now. The opportunity before you is whether or not to extend that power to deal with these other issues that come up related to subdivision. And again, the approving officer doesn't make that decision. It would be decided by a different staff member.
Okay. No, thank you for that. I always like to put a council decision on those because in order to be able to protect staff from having things come back to staff, and you can clearly point to there was a council decision on this matter, and it gives staff some coverage to make the decisions that they're making when they can say we're following the direction of council on this particular issue. And so when we have a more flexible definition of a minor variance, as an example, if you approve a different peak height than the neighboring properties, and they asked for a peak height change and they didn't get it, but this guy, he asked for it and he got it. It puts staff in a strange position versus if it's a council decision that creates that situation, and then you can blame us, and that's the way it should work. So that's why I tend to like having council direction paving the way for those issues. I'd be a little bit concerned about the single family subdivision flexibility extending, because we have quite a number of large lots, not quite a number, we have some large lots in the community that sort of, if they were subdivided heavily, it would make a dramatic change in that neighborhood that's not currently planned for the district. And so it's something that probably should come back as a council decision because of the nature of the change in the community. But that's all my questions at this moment. I'm trying to figure out the breadth and depth of this, because effectively we'd be abrogating a lot of our decision making or empowering staff to make a lot of decision making that's currently held by council. And so I want to be very clear on what the breadth and extent of it is. Councilor Murray, questions?
I do have questions. So on attachment 6 in B, in regards to the public hearing, it says the general manager will consider the following guidelines: policy alignment, staff support, zoning as it relates to a parcel that is of a zone other than the RS zones. Economic development allows for employment or commercial retail uses. I'm not clear if that's in an industrial context, or is that in a commercial context only? We've highlighted on the map a very significant breadth of our industrial land within the district. I'm unsure of that. Maybe you could clarify.
Yep, Councillor Murray, through the mayor, the guidelines that are proposed in attachment 6 to the report, they relate to but the recommendation to not hold a public hearing. The matter of the industrial lands and industrial and business park development forming character guidelines relates to the delegated development permit subject matter. So there are 2 different bylaw amendments associated with the report. So I would encourage you to look at them as 2 different matters tonight. So just to be clear, attachment 6 are the public hearing consideration guidelines, and then the matter of industrial lands and business park development relates to the form and character guidelines for the development permit. So the guidelines do include consideration of economic development and industrial lands, because those make up part of the district's economic development strategy, and can be considered to be something that's of relevant thought in making a recommendation to hold or not hold a public hearing.
Okay, so the other thing that industrial lands rezones a parcel from one industrial type to another industrial type, or rezones a parcel within an established industrial area. Number 7, the environment does not adversely affect the natural environment and responds to policy regarding sustainability and climate change and resilience. Hazard risk does not generate significant risk to people or environment. So I guess my problem with this section B is the general manager will consider. The word will consider. And there was a comment that Mr. Milburn made in response to your question that the approving officer would be approved or somebody else delegated on staff. It seems, Mr. Milburn, is there a reason why we have so many different, we're talking about single family subdivision tonight, we're talking about an update to a process to review the DAPR, and then we're talking about industrial land. Like, there seems to be a lot of items in this motion. I thought we were, when I emailed a couple of weeks ago asking when we were going to get a DAPR review, I thought we would have a discussion. So I'm confused as to why we're putting so many things that is so complex into this report and with this recommendation. So I'm wondering why we chose to do it that way.
Sure. So there are numerous streams of process review ongoing. We haven't taken the approach to simply resolve all issues with one process and then go on to the next process. Instead, there are multiple streams of process reviews ongoing. And that in part, as I mentioned, is that we have also a changing provincial regulatory environment as well in a number of areas. as well as changing market conditions that affect different industries, different parts of our community. So in terms of being efficient with council's time, we wanted to bring forward a few amendments that I think were generally consistent with the scope and the area of practice in development planning that would be efficiency matters that are really taking the next step in a previous direction council's already given us. So council has delegated development variance permits, for example, for a certain host of specified types of variances. This would be an enhancement if we were to expand the amount of delegation in that area. Additionally, council has taken steps, as Councilor Murray has pointed out, to look at how to be efficient about the public hearing process in response to provincial legislative changes. So this is a further movement forward on that particular area. So the intent really is to move forward on a few fronts, but specific to development approvals, and that was the intent of bringing these forward tonight.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure if it answers my question. For us to understand and absorb this, to really clearly understand it before we put our hand up either way, why the DAPR review, where we are, sort of a timeline as to where we are. I haven't seen anything since January. But then to add in these other amendments to the bylaws to give further abilities for staff to make decisions void of council without truly understanding the implications behind that and the examples is very challenging. It's a huge amount of complex legislation and variations of our existing bylaws to understand at an agenda on a council meeting, because we don't usually get this opportunity to ask this many questions, but this is, I've got a lot of questions and I need to understand visually as well. And I don't have any examples of that, except for the really good graph on the DAPR that I'm going to speak to when we get our speaking time. Thank you, Mayor Little.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Councillor, that it is one of the options available to council to only give first reading tonight and have a further discussion. That's always a choice. It's certainly much preferable to wordsmithing things on the fly tonight. And we do have time to do that if we need to do that. I'm going to keep going through questions. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your work on this obviously important matter. I have made statements from this council table before that I do support streamlining of the process and further delegation to staff. Like Councillor Murray, though, I am a little uncertain as exactly all the different scenarios we're talking about, and do want to give it I would be interested in more examples, but moving on from that, just focusing on the public hearing aspect. 2.2, the amended 2.2, page 61, essentially says the presumption will be that we won't have a public hearing, where that's not having a public hearing is permissible. But then goes to lengths to say for certainty, council may resolve to hold a public hearing in its discretion before or after the notice is provided and citation is given. I'd like to know more about how this is going to unfold procedurally. I mean, when does council get involved? I mean, as it currently stands, it comes before council. There's a proposal that we won't have a public hearing. And I think your point is that to this point in time, every time that's come our way, we've said, that's fine, we'll proceed without a public hearing. But I'm confused as to when we're going to have that input as to when we're going to have a public hearing or not. Perhaps if you could explain that a bit more.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Hanson. The amendment 2.2 is intended to provide a streamlined procedure option. So, as you mentioned, council has on several occasions resolved to not hold a public hearing. This new procedure would allow us to lead with that expectation and improve the process timeline by about a month. and by delivering the notice that says that the public hearing is recommended to not be held. And procedurally, the recommendation in staff's report would be to agree to not hold a public hearing, and then the recommended bylaw readings.
Mr. Milburn.
Just to answer the question more directly, you would have the choice at first reading. So right now, council considers first reading. And at that time, you consider whether or not you choose to hold a public hearing. That's the procedure right now for circumstances. Council, when the act changed, we had to write a report before you even saw first reading that council needed to consider whether or not to hold a public hearing before you even had the bylaw in front of you. So the procedure changed because the province amended that approach. So what we're suggesting is that instead we would presume that we would just give notice that the bylaw will be considered. That notice would go out to the public and we'd receive that written feedback and bring it back to you. And then at first reading, you would be able to decide whether or not, based on the feedback you've received, a public hearing is needed or not. So it would be at first reading, you would be given that option.
Thank you, Mr. Milburn.
Thank you. Councillor Ma.
So what I'm grappling with is that council wants to have more efficient development application process because from the development community, time is money. At the same time, just from hearing the comments and reading this, it appears to achieve that council needs to release some of its current approvals and delegate that to staff. Is that a correct high-level comment?
Through the mayor to Councillor Ma, yes, I would agree with that statement.
Okay, so to me, the trick is finding that balance or that comfort level, knowing what things we will delegate to staff. And if there is something that's coming through that, whoops, I guess what I'm trying to understand is how do I get notified of that potential oops? If, is it coming still at first reading or are these things somehow moving by that? So I'm not too clear on that. And I don't want to get into the weeds, but we seem to be, to me, we're trying to find that level, that comfort level to say, hey, Graham, you got this, take care of that. You notify us when there's something that might be different, or do we need to stay on top and go on that tracker and see what's coming up to make sure, hey, I should look at this. Like, I just want to make sure that we're doing our jobs, but we're also finding efficient processes for staff and for the development community. So it's finding that kind of like sweet spot. I wonder if you can comment on that.
Yeah, so again, through the mayor to Councillor Ma, we're talking about a variety of application types here tonight. There's consideration guidelines that staff use for a variety of application types. In the case of minor variance permits, there's the consideration guidelines that are scheduled to the development procedures bylaw. In the context of development permits, there's the forming character guidelines. And now proposed tonight is further guidelines to support a recommendation to hold or not hold a public hearing. Staff use a robust suite of consideration guidelines and their expertise and case precedent in their review and consideration of permits and various approvals. And even in the case of approvals being refused, an applicant has a path of recourse should they want to appeal that decision. So, yeah.
If I can ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Say council, accepts your recommendation and we move forward. And, is there a time where maybe 6 months or a year, we kind of say, hey, let's see how it's working. Like, it's just part of that continual improvement process that it should channel back to say, hey, you know, does council think it's working? Does staff think it's working? Does the development community thinks it's working? Like, do we have that option? Like, this isn't a one and it's done. I would think that it's gonna potentially come back for tweaking or adjustments. If you can comment on that.
Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Happy to respond to that question. When I think back to the last couple amendments council approved to delegate authority, one was in the area of minor development variance permits. About a year later, we reported back on the success of that process, and we significantly saw a drop in the processing times from that. So we reported on the number of permits. There was a handful of permits that were reviewed through that delegated authority. Similarly, when the coach house process had been amended a few times in the last 6 or 7 years, and one of those amendment processes was to delegate certain approvals to staff. Again, a year later, we reported on how many permits we saw approved, what were the issues. And so we definitely want to provide that kind of feedback mechanism. If these changes are agreed to by council, we would report back. What have we seen? Where are we seeing challenges, if any? And then course correct if we do see any challenges. There is still the ability, and the important part of those guidelines that we're showing is the acknowledgement that you know, staff draw on the experience of previous council decisions. If something is outside the norm, we'll refer that to council, right? If it's within the normal practice and there's efficiency to it and it's not causing the challenges you know, that you might be fearing right now, then it would go through the delegated approval if this is agreed by council. But again, some kind of feedback loop where we come back to council is definitely, we would appreciate that as well. We want to make sure that you're totally comfortable in implementation.
Thank you. Don't have any other indications for questions. Councillor Muir, you had your hand up first. Do you have a motion?
I move that we give this bylaw first reading and return it to a public workshop.
Yeah, I think there's enough questions about the impacts of this. It's far-reaching, and I just want to make sure we get it right because it really sets the course for years to come of how we're going to handle this. So I think it's worth making sure council's comfortable with the impact. So I'll be supportive of it, a first reading and it being referred to a council workshop.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I think my other concern is that there's three really big, huge things in this report: subdivision of residential lots, industrial. I'm not sure why we're focusing on the industrial part of it. The last time we did an industrial business park was 25 years ago when we did the Dollarton. That was a huge community process. So I'm really concerned when I look at the graph that I like, the status of where we are. You know, why we're focusing on that versus focusing on you know, the things that we're not doing right now, which is examining and redesigning additional application process to improve efficiency and effectiveness, develop and implement a triage and prioritization protocol for applications to find efficiencies and address organizational priorities, and evaluate departmental skills and develop a program of training to ensure adequate resource and effective workflow. You know, I'm in favor of streamlining the systems. We take a lot of hits. You know, you guys get a lot of complaints, but we get a lot of complaints from people that have put in an application. I'll use a parking pad on Deep Cove Road as a good example right now. Some of you are aware of that. It's been in the application process. We've been working through it for nearly a year. It's pushing about $150,000 to put a parking pad in on Deep Cove Road, so a family can access their property. They have no driveway or lane, and it's been sent back to engineering 7 times. And for me, that's the process I want us to focus on. I thought we were going to be focusing on that kind of application right away, not minor variances on industrial land and business parks, and not subdivisions. You know, I need to focus on those applications that seem so straightforward and simple, that are getting stuck in a log jam somewhere. My understanding is because we don't have an engineer that's able to sign off on a parking pad or a retaining wall in the building department. So it's some simple things. You know, I'm not going to be pressured by the provincial government's need for speed. You know, there is a role that this table plays in democracy, and listening to people. And I'm concerned in the public hearing portion of this report that talks about the 8 values, where it talks about the significant amount of, or the amount of information that would come to the general manager or come to staff in regards to whether or not we hold a public hearing. And we talk about sort of robust ways to communicate and connect with our community on different kinds of applications, rezoning applications. We've used over the years, you know, Facebook and social media, notification signage, and we have a significantly reduced amount of public input coming to these applications. And I have concern about that, because I think we assume that people, and I'll take my other 2 minutes, I think we assume that people are paying attention to our website or into an algorithm on social media, or that they can actually see the sign when they're driving down the road and understand what it says with all the legal jargon that we have to put on it, and just even being able to focus on the sign to see what we're talking about. And they don't. You know, I mean, as politicians, we know how to put up a sign. We do it every 4 years, and you know, we're not bad at getting people's attention. We could do a lot better. But I just have a big concern about robust communication, and who decides what significant is. Who gets to decide that process? You know, I want to be able to raise my hand and know that what I'm raising my hand for is going to make sense for the applicant, the resident that's wanting to subdivide their property. I am challenged at just trying to get a parking pad put in right now. And I want to understand why that is so difficult. I want to understand why it's so difficult to do, in some people's minds, very simple things, and then very complex things like this. I don't understand. I'm not understanding what you're asking me to do today. And I want this first reading in this workshop, I'd like to talk about the whole DAPR and how we have prioritized the work in this work plan going forward, because I'd like to give some input on that from what I'm hearing from residents and contractors, et cetera, and understand where we are a lot more than how I understand today. I also need to understand the implications of minor variances, what exactly that is. Because sometimes little things to maybe planners or an applicant are big things for the people that are living in the community. And I think our community desires to understand that as well. So I'm in favor of streamlining, absolutely, but I need to understand what streamlining actually means and the impacts of it.
Yeah, some similar comments to Councillor Muri in that I think I definitely want to empower staff to address more of the single family challenges that we have with development permits and with actual rebuilds. So we deal with about 100 to 150 house entire rebuilds, and about 10% of them end up coming to my office because of some concerns about the time in the process and how much cost delay there is in those developments. Most of that is around stormwater management. That's the most complex thing that most single family homes are dealing with in their redevelopment process. And I guess, you know, I want to see us take advantage of more things to streamline those processes, because those end up coming to our desk and to council occasionally. The public hearing waiving doesn't actually save any time, because we've already been waiving them, and therefore that month is already out of their process. And so it's not really a big change in it, because we've been waiving it already for a couple of years. And so, you know, us to focus on the bigger wins, the low hanging fruit, the places where we can get more of a time savings in the process. As Councillor Murray said, we haven't had an industrial rezoning of any significance, with the exception of, you mentioned the last time we built a business one, but in McKean, which was situated right in front of the one you used as an example property. I guess I have to ask the question, how would McKean have been looked at differently with these new regulations in place? Would it have changed anything? I don't know that it would have, because I think of the transportation pieces were some of the key issues, and I don't see any of that being identified in it. But so then again, I'm asking, are these the areas which have the largest delays for an average property in the community? Since the examples that we've seen there are so rare in the community. And so maybe as we go along, we can get a better indication of where you think the biggest savings are going to be. This frustrates 30 different projects a year. This frustrates 50 different projects a year. It adds time to all of these. That's a way that rings true with us, where we go, okay, well, we could point to where those savings are. But in the example of the waiving of the public hearing, we've already been waiving them. And so on all of those cases, it's not actually going to be making a change that I'm aware of in them. Again, as we proceed, I'm open to us being more aggressive about some of the changes that we're making. I just want to be clear about what it is that we're authorizing staff to do on our behalf. So I still probably have some more questions, although today's been very helpful, and so, but also I'll be supportive of Councillor Murray's motion. Councillor Mah. Councillor Pope.
Sorry, are you seconding her amendment to refer it to a council workshop?
It's not an amendment. That was the motion put on the floor.
The motion put on the floor that you're seconding is to have a council workshop.
The motion that was put on the floor was to grant first reading of all three bylaws,
Yeah.
or all three pieces, and then refer the matter to a workshop. Correct.
Right, but this is, yeah, okay. No, I don't think that it should be referred to a workshop. There's only a few changes here. We're talking about allocating approval for minor variances to staff. It's the next step in creating efficiencies, which is what we constantly talk about here. And we also constantly hear from homeowners and developers and businesses that they are strangled by the red tape, bureaucracy, and lengthy delays of the district. So I'm in favor of these minor changes being made. As for public hearings, having sat through a number of them in my term here, I'm convinced that public hearings are necessarily an effective way to hear representation from all members of the public. Many people, especially families or single parents, cannot attend public hearings. Many people work at night, and many people do not want to speak publicly in this forum the way it works. And they have alternatives. There's so many alternatives for people to reach us in 2025. We have email. We have social media, phone calls, petitions, citizens assemblies, the website, all of these ways that people can communicate with council. So to say that, we're not having a public hearing is a little bit disingenuous if we're talking about receiving public input and public feedback, because we do get it in so many other ways every day. So no, I see this as, once again, certain members of this council trying to delay any amount of progress forward in an effort to overall cause any progress in the district to be stalled or blocked. And I think that's the ultimate agenda. So no, I won't support this.
I don't think the legislation actually reduces the number of public hearings, but Councillor Back.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you very much, staff, for the report. Thank you for all the staff work that's gone in over the past couple of years, almost into the development approvals process review. I won't be supporting the motion as that's on the floor at the moment by introducing another step by adding a workshop. I support the recommendations by staff that are before us tonight. I think delegating more routine permits and variances to staff is a pretty practical move that should reduce timelines, and aligning our public hearing procedures with provincial legislation just makes sense. These are good steps, and I fear council, we are once again being extremely cautious here tonight, delaying this particular process, which is all about speeding up and becoming more efficient. I think it's fair to acknowledge the frustration that we continue to hear, as Councillor Pope alluded to, from residents and builders. I can't count how many times someone has stopped me at an event or written me an email saying, we just want to do a small addition, or we've been waiting months, and every time we check back, there's yet another item on the checklist. Councillor Murray cited the parking pad example. Mine is somebody who is looking for a minor variance for a renovation to add a wheelchair lift to his home, so he can continue to enjoy it as physical challenges make that harder and harder for him. These are people who are trying to invest in their homes or build something that aligns with our plans, and they often feel like the process is unpredictable and constantly changing. So I think we need to continue this work. I think I would have been happier if I'd seen more progress to this point, given that we started in 2023, because tonight's changes are welcome, but I think we still have a long ways to go to get to where we want to be. So I'll leave it at that. I think it's not about helping developers, it's about helping people, families, small builders wanting to deliver projects, and residents simply trying to improve their properties. So I support the staff recommendation, which is that we move the first 3 readings and not go to a workshop to discuss this even more.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much. I am going to be supporting the motion that's on the table. Thank you to members of council who spoke. Appreciate all your comments. Thank you to staff for all of your hard work in this area. I studied the report carefully. I think I'm comfortable with the proposals that are put forward. However, in a matter such as this, I would appreciate just a little more clarity. I would appreciate an opportunity to have some discussion of some examples, so we know exactly what it is that we're authorizing. These types of changes, obviously, once made, are in place hopefully forever. And I just think a little more, from my point of view, a little more clarity around the development permits we're talking about, the minor variances we're talking about, and potentially how the public hearing, I think I now do appreciate how the public hearing proposal will work itself through. But I don't think it's a time-consuming process to have a little bit further discussion, after which I'm confident we can move ahead with this. And I do look forward to the broader discussion about the DAPR review, and certainly share the views of everyone on this table that the faster we can move ahead with that, and the sooner we can get a streamlined approvals process with greater staff authority. From my point of view, that's what we're seeking. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mah.
Thank you. I do respect the opinions provided tonight at this table. And for me, there are 2 issues at play here. To improve our development approval process, are we comfortable delegating some authority to staff? To me, I am comfortable with that, but I want to be clear. It's not blind trust. It's trust and verify. Council still has an opportunity to check in with our annual review and, hear the report from staff. The second issue is, as some know, this past week, I've been dealing with some issues around governance. To me, council should set policy And, we do have a key role to play in how our community evolves, but at the same time, we need to enable our qualified staff to do their jobs. In my opinion, this process and the changes in front of us is about improving processes that are so frustrating to so many parties, whether they're property owners, neighbors, or builders. I will not support the current motion on the floor. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe it's just me, but I find this very heavy in content to understand. There aren't necessarily all the definitions that really should be laid out there. We've talked about the minor variances. There aren't processes. It says that if this happens, this will happen, but it doesn't tell us how. Like, how does council get involved? How does the public approach council that they want something to be looked at again? So I'm finding this very heavy in content, and I really do think that we need an opportunity, because we have never sat down and discussed this. This is the first eyes on for council, I believe, for this report, correct? So I really think, because we haven't had any opportunity to discuss, I really think rather than tie up, the council meeting, we should have brought this to a workshop and allowed discussion to happen there before it came out. And that's our normal process that we do if something's complicated or a bit heavy for us to deal with. So I do support the motion, but I just wanted to ask, on this motion that's up on the screen, is that the one that you've done for Councillor Murray's motion? I see at the bottom it says that it's referred to a council workshop.
Yeah, not that part.
Yeah, not the
It's
Yeah.
just the readings and referral to a workshop.
Yeah. There you go.
That's it. That's it. Thank you. I just wanted
That
that.
reflects it.
So I'm in favor of that.
Okay, I see no further speakers on the matter. Prepared to call the question. The question is on first reading to the first, or still what's written on the screen. First reading on the first two items and then referral to a council workshop. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with councillors Ma, Back, and Pope opposed. Okay. Do we have an idea in mind of when we could schedule that workshop at this point? I know we have a number of workshop dates set out in the calendar over the next month. Maybe we'll carry on with the business of this evening and check back in with planning staff and see if there's a preferred date in mind. It'd be great to get that going right away. Okay, so next item up for discussion is item 8.2. This is the Provincial Housing Targets Progress Reporting for the District of North Vancouver, October 1st, 2024 to September 30th, 2025. Mr. Milburn for some opening comments on the matter.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Jaden Coop, community planner, will be giving an introductory presentation. I just wanted to, from the side table, I just wanted to note a couple things to draw council's attention to. Fundamentally, we do have thousands of applications in our pipeline at the various stages. So building permit, development permit, and so on. Those are reflected in figure 3 of the report before you tonight. I also would note that as you look at projects where building permits have been issued, really the timeline is fundamentally up to the builder. So whether the builder proceeds or not, based on market conditions, based on labor supply, based on material supply, based on their contractors' overlapping schedules and objectives, fundamentally the occupancy is falling on the builder. And so I think that's an important consideration when reflecting on the provincial government's Housing Supply Act requirement to verify occupied units. Thank you, and Your Worship, if we may receive just some introductory comments from Mrs. Coop.
Please.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. In September 2023, the province issued the district with a housing target order. This provincial directive requires the district to complete 2,838 net new housing units in a 5-year time frame, and that's from 2023 to 2028. In addition, the district is required to prepare and submit progress reports to the province, and that is the report before you tonight. The progress report outlines the number of completed housing units, as well as actions taken by the municipality that are aligned with meeting the target. The district has just completed the second year of the order, and the annual cumulative target for this 2-year period is 1,021 net new completed housing units. During this time, the district completed 832 net new housing units, which is 189 units short of the provincial housing target. In other words, the district achieved about 81% of the provincial target in that 2-year period. In addition to the 832 net new units completed over the past 2 years, the district has over 3,000 multifamily units currently in stream. Many of these units are expected to contribute towards the district's 5-year housing target by 2028. Over the last 12 months, the district has undertaken actions that align with meeting the housing target. This includes advancing social and supportive housing projects on district-owned land, advancing key projects such as the DAPR project and the zoning bylaw rewrite, and completing an interim housing needs report. Pending resolution from council this evening, the progress report will be put on the district website and submitted to the minister. The next reporting period will end in September 2026. Staff are available for any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you very much. There's a recommended motion. Councillor Hanson, is we making that? Okay, I'll make the staff recommendation. I'll be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder for that? We kind of need to. Goodbye, Councillor Back. Thank you very much. Just my own comments on this. I mean, I know that our recommendation from the very beginning was that it should be approvals. That would be a better indicator of the municipality's participation in the process rather than completions, because that's so heavily weighted in the market responses. I've said it before publicly, you know, when I met with the minister at the time, you know, I expressed my frustration that the targets weren't actually going to help us address some of the challenges that we have the way they were. If they wanted to be more aggressive about municipalities producing more units, fine. You can use the targets for that purpose. But the problem is when Bill 44, 46, and 47 came in, it meant that instead of us placing those units where we have transit and development and infrastructure in the ground, that we were going to be subject to placing those units really anywhere in the district of North Vancouver, and we wouldn't be able to get the critical mass for the services and improvements in those areas. And so I have been critical of this as a way to achieve the objectives that they've suggested. I think that approvals would be a better indicator of whether a municipality is being supportive of creating new units or whether they're intentionally inhibiting it. And if that were the case, then you would see that this council has at least very recently advanced some very significant developments in our community far beyond these targets. So I see that the 5-year target, our numbers above that number. And so hopefully there is some grace extended to whether they fall in the particular quarter or not. But I think it's very defensible for us to have approved the number of units that we approved, and just because they're not completed in the particular time zone of a reporting process, that doesn't mean that the district is being obstructionist in any reasonable fashion. So some of it is going to depend upon the market availability of labor and supply and tariffs and other challenges that we have. So well beyond the scope of the municipality. So I'll be supportive of receipt, and we'll keep moving on, modernizing our community and trying to do it in ways that make sense for our community. Councillor Back, you seconded it. I don't know if you have any additional comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I don't have too much to add. It's encouraging to see that we're broadly on track to meet our 5-year housing target. But I guess it would be a question to staff, and that is if staff could speak to what specific barriers are preventing some of these approved projects. The number is 1,319 that are in building permit stage for moving forward. And I realize that many of these things are out of our control, but what tools does the district have to help accelerate some of these to construction?
Comments? Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The tools that the district has is issuing land use approvals, so rezonings, development permits that council does routinely. We have a lot of building permit applicants in. Typically, they've been requesting that staff deliver permits in an expedited manner. At this point in time, not all, but there's probably a little bit less pressure on staff to deliver those permits, despite the fact that they're in process, and that's largely a part of the current market conditions. Having said that, there's little that tools that we have. It then falls to the developer to move forward with the project, and I think that's been iterated various times.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I certainly recognize that there are factors beyond our control. You mentioned some of them, Mayor Little, but anything we can do to modernize, our approvals and move some of these projects along, I would support. I do hear from developers from time to time who are frustrated with how long it takes to move through the process here. So, I think there probably are still more we could be doing, but I'm glad to see that we are at least in the 5-year target on pace.
Great. Councillor Mah.
Thank you. Although we missed the target in year 2, we appear to be in a good position with in-stream projects, notwithstanding Mr. Milburn's cautionary comments that it is the developer, based on many factors, who solely decides whether the units are built. Overall, to me, this shows that the district can be responsible in managing how and where growth should occur in the district. None of these units, as I understand, are a result of SHMU, and I would suggest that the province take note of that. Thank you.
Okay, I see no further speakers. Prepared to call the question on.
Hold on.
Oh, Councillor Murray.
I'm just trying to find a, yeah, it's a shame that the province doesn't understand that we can't make the developers build. Like, I find that so unbelievably perplexing that somehow when we approve zoning, that means that those developers are going out and they start building. And they do not. There are properties that have been held in this region for years that were zoned years ago that have sat, many in the district of North Vancouver. They've been flipped multiple times. Capilano Road, Marion Drive, that property flipped 3 times during, the era of shadow flipping and offshore investment into the province. So I am stunned by the fact that they are dumping all of this on us like we haven't done enough. When we have no plan for additional infrastructure, we have no plan for a new bridge. We've just had an addition to our hospital in the city of North Vancouver, and a resident on the Parkway sat for 9.5 hours in emergency the other day. We don't have a plan for schools. We are at the the needs of the provincial government, funding per student. And their plans take so long, by the time you actually build the school, it's overflowing with kids. And we need to look at portables. And then the reflection that the provincial government refuses to make on what they have contributed to this problem that they see, which is rewriting the building code every couple of years, the layers upon layers upon layers of requirements for the new policies that they've created. And they don't want to look in the mirror and recognize the challenge that they've put us into. Regardless of funding, how we're going to pay for all of this infrastructure to support all the people that are coming to our communities. So it really is a disconnect. And karma is a funny thing, because karma has come to land on the doorstep of the provincial government with the fact that we've got 18,000 units in the region right now that are under construction, 3,500 by the end of this year in the city of Vancouver alone, and another 75,000 units in the pipe at various stages of development that is laid out on the colored graph that in our report, that we really don't know what's going to happen with any of them. Most of those units, rental units, this is coming from Rennie, the real estate king of Vancouver, who articulates this in his September 2025 newsletter, and is making the rounds through media and social media right now. And it was what's impacting that the most is the levels of immigration that the federal government has pulled back on, mainly students who would pick up those rental units that are no longer going to be the thrust of keeping those units propped up. You know, why we were never called when the doors of immigration were being opened and asked to be asked, I'll take my second 2 minutes, to be asked, how are you going to look after these people? Because a lot of those immigrants are saying, you invited us here. There was actually a story on CBC. They asked immigrants what they thought, and they said, you know, you asked us to come to this country, you said that this would be a good place for us to be, but we can't find a doctor. There's not enough hospitals, there's not enough schools, and everything's so expensive. And now we're pulling back on that concept, and now we've got all these empty units that are coming in stream. I mean, it's a quandary, and it's too bad that the three levels of government can't sit down and communicate with one another and talk about these problems, because we're just divided now. We're pitting ourselves against one another, and we're just divided, and there's no reason for it. You know, in the last few years, this province has been turned upside down with this legislation. Municipally, I don't think actually we will exist if this government continues down this road. There really won't be a reason to have a council, because our biggest power is zoning. And like the school district is given a budget, and they're told to implement that budget. And if they don't implement it, then they're removed. We've seen that in the district before, or in North Vancouver. So I see this as just dividing communities, dividing governments, not coming to the table to discuss and ascertain solutions to our problems. You know, sort of an authoritarian approach to government that I've never seen before, and I'm so disappointed by. And it's not good for the sustainability of our community. It's not good for our residents. It's not good for business. And quite frankly, it's not good for our reputation. Thank you, Mayor Little.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. I see no further speakers on the matter. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Okay. Next up, we have item 8.3. This is creating an aging and older person strategy, and the author is Councilor Ma. Councilor Ma, I'll look to you to introduce the item and put it on the floor. So I need you to move it, and we'll seek a seconder.
I move the recommendation for staff to develop an aging and older person's strategy.
Okay, is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Back. Councillor Mo, your comments, please.
Okay. I want to first say thanks to Adriana Ryer for helping me with some background research. She is the former council liaison officer who recently moved into a new and exciting role with the city of Coquitlam. So I wish her luck. In terms of my report, the origins date back to the Assembly of North Shore Leaders meeting on senior health held on April 3rd earlier this year. At that meeting, we learned about the growing needs of older people and what's happening in our community. A couple of things struck me. First, evolving demographics, and we've heard this before. Currently, about almost 20% of people in BC are over 65. By 2035, that proportion will reach 25%. That's 1 in 4 people. And given the current makeup of the district, I would hazard to guess that that proportion could be even higher in the district. And, you know, the question is, will we be ready? Second, there are many good agencies out there doing good work, but to me, it seems like there's not necessarily a comprehensive strategy. Now, in terms of these agencies, there's some very professional and effective groups. One of them, we're here tonight, Silver Harbor, who was one of the key organizers of the assembly that was held back in April. I also want to thank MLA Susie Chan, Parliamentary Secretary for Senior Services and Long-Term Care, for her expression of support in an email earlier today to Council. So someone asked me, what does it mean to have an aging and older person strategy? Well, it's multifaceted. It could be as basic as ensuring we have public washrooms at transit hubs, ensuring that we have benches at our parks and other gathering places, ensuring that we have bike paths for people, including cycling without ages, which gives rides to people in their trishaws. It's also ensuring that we have enough sports courts. It's also ensuring that handicap parking stalls, especially on streets, have enough space where wheelchairs can be loaded from the rear. It's looking at disability and mobility issues. For example, should we at pedestrian crossing have the option for some people to push a button to have longer crossing time? It's also about increasing awareness of the option to defer your property taxes to help with affordability issues for older people. You know, maybe we sponsor a clinic in partnership with one of these social service agencies on the North Shore. The strategy is also about looking how our seniors' housing is built. Should we encourage developers to have more common areas for seniors to gather and maybe work with one of those social service agencies in providing programming? The key here is to help reduce the social isolation. And that should be one of the goals of the strategy. The strategy should be also about working with the library, Manova, the Rec and Culture Commission, and the SEAM to see what else these district agencies can do for older people in our community. They do a lot now, but I wonder what we can do if we all really work together. And that's the key part of this strategy, working together with the community members, community groups, and other levels of government to provide better service to the older people in our community. We also need an efficient way to assess how we're doing in providing these services. Bottom line, when the district develops policies and programs, one lens and question that we should ask ourselves: have we considered the needs of older people? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Back, second.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'm very happy to second and support this motion from Councillor Ma. We know the fastest growing demographic in our community is seniors, those over the age of 65. This isn't something that's coming down the road. It's happening right now. And quite frankly, as a municipality, I've thought for some time that we're not ready for what that means and what that entails. In many ways, we're already behind where we need to be. Councillor Ma has pointed out some of the needs are obvious, like more affordable and diverse housing options so seniors can remain in the community that they helped build, and better access to healthcare and long-term care so people aren't forced to move away as their needs change. But I was thinking about some of the other less obvious and just as important things that could be considered as part of a seniors strategy, seniors and aging older person strategy. I'll get that right. But things like curbside management and parking strategies, which we talk about a lot, but how they relate to seniors to be able to get safely and conveniently to their medical appointments, grocery stores, community programs, or ensuring that our public spaces are designed for accessibility, mobility, social connection, things like, as Councillor Ma highlighted, just good benches, good lighting, safe level paths where people can rest and feel part of community life. We often talk, myself included, about how to make the district a great place for young families, and that's important. But I'd argue that many of the things that make a community safe for children also benefit older adults. Safer streets for people on bikes and pedestrians, slower vehicle speeds, accessible crossings. Those are the types of improvements that will help everyone. So in other words, a well-designed community is an all ages community. There's also this economic piece to it as well. As our population ages, we need to think about how our local economy supports that reality. What kinds of businesses and services do older adults rely on? Are we creating the sort of conditions for those types of businesses to thrive here? I was thinking back to when council had a tour of a local business, HMAE Home Health, which is a business in our community in the Lynn Creek area that provides mobility and home care equipment for seniors. It's a great example of how a company is meeting a growing need while providing jobs and keeping dollars circulating right here on the North Shore. As we plan for an aging population, we should be asking, how do we attract and support more businesses like that? The ones that make it easier for seniors to live independently and stay connected to their community. So I think this motion is very timely. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about pulling together with what we already know and identifying the gaps to set a direction so that we're prepared for the demographic changes that are ahead, but really upon us. And as I do with so many things, I think about how the strategy would be stronger if it were developed collaboratively, just as the District of North Vancouver, not just as the District of North Vancouver, but with our partners across the North Shore, the city, West Vancouver, and 2 First Nations. Seniors don't see municipal boundaries, as we heard from Silver Harbor. Half are district residents, half are city residents, and neither should our planning. So I really think it would be incumbent upon us to reach out across the North Shore to build this type of strategy together. But thank you, Councillor Ma, for bringing this forward. I think this is the kind of proactive, compassionate planning that we need, one that ensures we're ready for the demographic reality ahead and that our community continues to be a place where people of all ages can live well, stay connected, and feel supported.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beck. Councillor Pope.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Ma, for bringing forward this motion, which I will be supporting. We know that the seniors population in North Van is growing, and having a senior strategy will help guide policy in the future. And for that reason, I do support this motion. I wish it was more focused on the biggest priorities and urgent needs of seniors in the district. We know that there is an urgent need for more long-term care beds in North Van. The district had a 276 bed shortage just a few years ago, and that's obviously grown since then. The waits for supportive housing are too long, and the in-home care supports are too expensive. That should be a priority for council. We also already know that one of the most pressing issues for many seniors is the rising cost of living. Many are facing precarious financial circumstances. The fastest growing cohort of homelessness in North Van is older people. And the waiting list for seniors subsidized housing has increased 50% in the last few years. So I would like to see these 2 issues, more publicly funded long-term care beds and affordable housing for seniors, made a priority in a seniors strategy with actionable, concrete plans. The report raises the problem of social isolation for seniors. And while there is a huge demand for programs and services at centers like the Silver Harbor, I want to pick up on something that the seniors advocate has also highlighted. Seniors in their 60s and 70s today are more physically active than ever before. It's one reason why my favorite sport, pickleball, has exploded. It's because it creates the most amazing community of players who become good friends, who talk and text each other every single day. And I often play with seniors who have dementia or Parkinson's, and they are out there hitting the ball at 80. I hope that I will be one of them someday, out there hitting the ball at 80. But the point is that any senior strategy must incorporate the need for recreational facilities. And that as we look to the budget in the coming weeks, we must remember that our aging population needs more outdoor recreational facilities, more indoor recreational facilities, more pickleball courts, in addition to chair yoga and knitting programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you, Councillor Ma, for bringing this forward. I think we do a lot of these things already. And I think what I would hope staff would bring back is what are we doing? Give us an inventory of what are we doing. I'm looking at the city of Vancouver's, and I'm sure it, reflects much of what we're doing. But our community spaces, how we are putting in infrastructure at intersections, lengthening the time of a crosswalk button, making sure curb cuts are accessible with walkers, and making sure those spaces that we're building do incorporate seniors. I would really like to have the agencies, the partnership agencies around North Van take a look at what they're doing and what and then we look at what we're doing and then come together with that inventory and prepare that for council. I'm glad Councillor Pope's brought up the lack of beds for seniors in long-term care facilities. Not that that's anything to do with us. It's not our level of government. We're in zoning, but maybe not for long. But recently, the provincial government has, after they pumped about nearly $500 million into long-term care during COVID, they've recently announced that that money is disappearing. And it's going to affect, and that actually happened last week, Halloween. Scary day for long-term care operators. Because that's putting more than 750 long-term care beds and almost 140 assisted living suites at risk of closure. So if we were deficient with the long-term care beds in the district, we're going to be really deficient right now, because that money that was picked up at COVID filled the gaps for those long-term care beds to exist. And obviously, since COVID, people have aged, and that need has grown, and now we're going to be pulling back. So again, we're not planning very well. I think a lot of these agencies, and I think Ms. Lovren spoke about it with their presentation, that they could do more funding. They could expand their programming if they had more funding. There was a pilot that was considered to bring seniors together to maybe cohabitate in a unit at $100,000. That pilot got canceled because the money wasn't there. We are not living within our means. We are not sustainable. We need to be looking at these issues of our aging population and addressing their needs. People are living longer. There's more of us, and the facilities that we have are not appropriate. But again, nothing to do with our council. We do not have the trigger to be able to address that issue. We can be advocates, we can speak out, but it's really not going to, impact that issue. That is for the provincial government to work on. And currently, they're actually reducing the ability for people to live in long-term care. So I hope this motion to staff is going to be an inventory what our community hubs create, places like Parkgate Senior Society, Silver Harbor, Hollyburn, what do they offer, and work with existing recommendations that we've had in place for many years. Our housing work that Ms. Bond was part of in regards to our task force, what were some recommendations there. But I hope that it incorporates a full gambit of different services and needs, and identifies for council where there are gaps that we could consider as we move forward.
Very much. Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Ma, for bringing this forward. As I listened to the comments, and I thank all of council for those comments, reflecting on the fact that it's pretty broad spectrum when we talk about seniors' needs across the North Shore. I think of my grandmother, who was a retired senior for over 42 years on the North Shore. The biggest chapter of her life was retirement right here in the district. And I think of the spectrum of needs she had from when she was younger than me, I hate to say, right up until she was 1 week before her 99th birthday. Yes, there were issues of home care. Yes, ultimately issues of residential care, medical care. But in the early days, it was more issues of social isolation, having places to go, people to see, things to do that didn't involve employment and family. Because as has been stated, as you reach retirement, and you don't necessarily have those connections, those daily connections that you do as a younger person. So we're talking about a lot of things when we're talking about a senior strategy. But thank you very much, Councillor Ron. I do believe there is a lot we can do. There is a lot that a local government can do. And I look forward to penetrating that, looking at what it is that's available by way of a strategy. And there's going to be more and more of us who are seniors. I don't know how it's defined these days, but if it's 65 and older, I'm there in just a very few months. And others at this council.
55.
Well, then that's a very large group indeed. So anyway, more and more of us are going to be seniors, and that's going to be more and more, I believe, an important component of public policy across all levels of government. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Council, for the constructive comments on this. I do think that this is a serious issue for us to address, and there are lots of ways that municipalities can help contribute to the solution. But you know, it's true. Probably the biggest single issue is the long-term care beds question. There's no question that hallway medicine is in full effect at our local hospital, largely driven by the availability of long-term care beds. The people that are waiting in the hallways are almost entirely waiting for a long-term care facility bed to clear up, if you get my drift on that. And so my wife works in long-term care. She works at Inglewood facility, and so, you know, I hear about the challenges they have at those facilities. I think most of the wage change was mostly in the private facilities. So the federal or the provincial government decided to subsidize the wage of a number of classes of work, and that funding as it ran out. The effect, it was certainly helpful for a time, but the effect is all of those people feel like they've had, and they definitely do have, a decrease in pay because of the way the government took the subsidy away. And so it's a big challenge for a lot of operators to be able to navigate, but I think most of the public facilities are fairly protected from that. It may not be popular to say, but the #1 seniors related complaint that I get into my office is our garbage regulation. It's the number of people who have had slips and falls while trying to get their garbage bin out to the street. And so the district adopted a few years ago a regulation that is zero tolerance, $500 fine for not taking your garbage out to the curb. Now, obviously, well-intentioned to protect bears. We don't want to see bears shot. We definitely want to see that managed. but there's no question it's deeply impacting our aging community. I have had dozens of people in the community come forward, explain the life-altering injuries that they have had as a result of that policy. And so I know it will be a challenge for people to address it, but maybe we have to come up with a way that during the icier months of the year, we come up with something that's a little more age friendly, because having seniors hauling garbage cans up and down their driveways in icy conditions is not great. And so maybe we can also see if they can make some recommendations about alterations to our bylaws to help support seniors as well as we go through this. But I just wanted to affirm everything that's been said about this, the park benches, washroom accessibility, making sure that we have a plan for washrooms in a number of communities. Everybody benefits from that. That's one of the things I always appreciated about serving on the advisory committee for disabilities issues. I was on there for 6 or 7 years. The recommendations aren't just for seniors. Everybody benefits from them. Everybody, when the community is more accessible, when the systems are more thoughtful and integrated, everybody benefits from them, because odds are you're going to break a leg at some point in your life, and you're going to benefit from the accessibility changes that we've created for people who are most in need, but we've made available to everyone. The fact that there's a bench sitting along that street, I love it. I will go and sit on a public bench on a regular basis when I'm out for a walk, and just for comfort reasons. And if there's a water fountain and if there's a washroom nearby, we all benefit from those things. So I'm happy to use the excuse of supporting seniors in our community to help advance some of those creature comforts that we all benefit from. So I will be supporting the motion. Councillor Murray, I believe.
I just wanted to say, Mayor, a little that I do understand the implications of the garbage. I think we have to tread very carefully, because those regulations did actually dramatically reduce the amount of conflicts with wildlife, bears particularly, and garbage. But we also do have, and we probably don't, we probably don't put it out there as much as we should. But we do have a program with our swampers, our solid waste, where residents that have, a bit like mobility issues can call our OC and arrange for the swampers, when they arrive to their homes, to help bring their garbage can down. We are the last municipality in the region to have regular garbage pickup weekly. We've always done that because we believe it's a core service. That's why we have the larger cans. And I think there's probably a lot more information. People get into the habit of putting out their garbage can every week when maybe they don't need to necessarily. And I think we could look at a program where we could assist a little bit more, and at least let those that do have those challenges be informed about the service that we provide.
Thank you very much. See no further speakers. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Okay, we've completed the business of this evening's meeting. We do usually create an opportunity for reports. Members of council would like to make a report. I'll make one quick report, which is just a reminder that on Remembrance Day, which is coming up in just a little bit over a week, the District of North Vancouver supports 3 separate Remembrance Day ceremonies in our community. One, which is the large ceremony in the city of North Vancouver at Victoria Park. Our services will be there, including fire representation and all of our agencies, and I'll be there as well. And then we have one that's really a good family-friendly one that is down at Kate's Park. Nice and easy, come and go. But both of those venues are a little bit slippery sometimes. If you're not so comfortable on an uneven surface, then I have to recommend the Lynn Valley Legion, which is another recognition that we support. And there you're obviously inside the facility, and therefore, if you're concerned about slipping on a rainy day on a grassy hill, then that's probably the best location for you to observe the day. And so I would just encourage everybody to find a time, find a space to remember the sacrifices of so many Canadians. And I will be at the Victoria Park. I think Councillor Murray, you mentioned you'll be at
Oh,
Kate's Park?
yeah, I'll be at Kate's Park and there is some, we're doing our park recreation, our shoreline restoration project down there. So there's quite a significant area that's been fenced off, but it's just generally in the park area. It's not in the parking. So the parking hasn't been affected. There's no parking regulations right now in any of our parks, including the ones that have paid parking. And so it really is business as usual down there, and look forward to seeing any other Councillor Hanson's usually there to share in that, and so look forward to that.
We have a
Not sure
beautiful
where the other councillors are going.
Jade Memorial Cairn down there.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mick will be down there
Yeah.
and that group, so that'll be good. That's the only report I have to make tonight. Anybody else like to make a report? Councillor Ma?
Thank you. On Saturday, November 1st, the DNV Firefighters Charitable Societies held their annual pumpkin drop at the Maplewood Fire Training Center. I believe it's the 12th annual. It is a fundraiser for the society, but it was a great community event. Kids lined up to drop their pumpkins from 4 stories. My kid, who's now 16, was not with me, but I went there, and you know, pumpkins do make a big splash when they hit from 4 stories up. It was a fun time by all, and it was a great job by the firefighters union and you know, Kyle. So thank you to them.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I only had 12 trick-or-treaters on Halloween night. Little bit low, but we're on the parkway, so it's always a low number, but I heard because of the rain, some of the numbers were a little soft. Sorry, Councillor Ma, yeah?
This one more item this Wednesday. Did you want to
Well,
mention
I was going
that?
to talk about it after, but sure. Yeah, Manova is hosting their first gala this Wednesday, which will be an important fundraiser. I think there are still some tickets available. It's going to be down at the museum. We've got a few different musical acts performing, including Jay Knutson, who was an original member of the band Spirit of the West. Yeah, so that's this week as well.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Miri.
I just wanted to update council on last week's Metro board meeting where the budget was presented to the board. And myself, Mayor Buchanan, and the representatives from the municipality of Surrey voted against the budget. We're looking at a 2.5% and 5% increase. The savings over 5 years is about $364 million and about 1.2 billion in capital. The mayor of the city of North Vancouver and myself, and there's been lots of raucous debate, obviously, in regards to the budget, still have concerns in regards to that long-term funding for major capital projects. We don't have any certainty from senior levels of government in regards to how we're going to pay for these. In many cases, such as the North Shore Sewage Treatment Plant and Iona regulatory projects. And that gives us great concern, considering the housing minister has indicated that DCC's development cost charges that support developments could be slashed up to 50%. And the Prime Minister has been indicating an austerity budget with the word sacrifice used in the last week and a half. That will be introduced tomorrow, I believe. So it's very uncertain times right now. And, you know, regardless of directives, I think there's many members of councils around the region wondering how we're going to get through all of this without a financial plan. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. I see no further reports. So we've completed the business. I'll accept adjournment. Accepted. Thank you very much to everybody for participating. I want to say a special thanks to staff for their preparation of the reports for our consideration today. And everybody have a fantastic evening and week. Good night.